Brian Sitch, I'm Curator of Archaeology at the Manchester Museum. I'm delighted to be here at the South Shields Museum and I'm able to interview Mr. Raeef, who's a member of the South Shields Dual Heritage Project. David and I have visited South Shields today and we've spoken to Alex, the curator, about a very interesting inscription in the collection that was actually set up by a man who came from the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire some 1800 years ago. This man came from a place called Palmyra. But I understand that your family came to South Shields much more recently, and your father indeed came from Yemen. Can you tell us something about how that happened?
Well, it happened principally as being an Adenese national and Aden being a protectorate. He was used, as a lot of other of his countrymen, as workers in the British Navy, Merchant Navy, as engine room, coolies, firemen at the time of the just after the First World War, through the Second World War. So that's how my father came to South Shields through the maritime shipping industry.
And when your father came, I understand that at that time it wasn't possible for men to bring their wives and their children out, their families out to South Shields. So perhaps understandably, these men formed relationships with women in South Shields.
Yeah.
And your mother came from South Shields, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She came from South Shields, and they met in South Shields in 1948, 49.
Your parents were in a mixed race marriage, and what kind of reaction or response did they get from people in South Shields?
Well, I can tell you about a really close response, which was one from my grandmother, and she didn't speak to me now for 25 years. So that's quite a big response, isn't it?
And that was because of race?
Yeah, and so they just didn't speak for many years. And then obviously 16 of those 25 years, my mum was in Aden with my father. But, generically, there is hostility to why Yemeni sailors marry local women. It's been well documented. South Shields is a brilliant place to live, and more often than not, people are very accommodating to each other. But we still have these problems that reoccur through time, and not always will, because there will be certain people who don't want a mix of different people, so these will occur. But more often than not, people live and let live and get on. And,
Raeef, we've spoken about your parents, just as your parents, but we haven't actually spoken about what they were called. You told us a little bit about how they met, but can you give us a little bit of background about them as people?
Absolutely.
What they were like?
Yeah, absolutely. My father was called Abdul, my mother was called Emily, but her Islamic name, which she chose, was Elia. Elia. And my mother actually changed her religion of her own volition before she married my father. So, she found her own faith. She wasn't forced or asked by her husband to change her faith. She changed her faith because of her own volition. And, going to Aden and living there for so long, it was such a happy time for my parents, Emily and Abdul, that's the names.
And your father, you said he spent some time away from the sea. He worked in a factory. Did you go back to sea again later on?
Yeah, I went back to sea up until he died, a year before he died, which was in 1978. Was
that difficult for your family because your father was away at sea for perhaps long periods of time?
Difficult for me because it was only me and my mother. I didn't have any siblings.
And did you have friends with children from other Yemeni families in South Shields?
When we first came back to, mum and dad came back. It was my first time here, a 3-year-old coming here. We had a house in Owen Street, which was a little bit further away from the normal area where the Arabs and Yemenis lived.
Was that Holborn, what used to be called
Holborn?
No,
it wasn't Holborn. It was further towards sort of Tyne Dock area, which is a part of South Shields. Not too far, but there was, less people of Jewish heritage or even, other heritage background living in that area. And I made my own networks because I didn't have any siblings, and I knew my parents, and it was just me and my parents. So, you know, I made my own social networks, and that's what people do. You make your own social networks.
And those friends were English Yemeni regardless.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't really matter.
Yeah, but what will come out in this Dual Heritage project, I'm sure, is when people actually start speaking and talking about their personal histories, whatever they want to divulge, you know, there will be more of a sense of belonging for each other.
And have you kept up your Arabic? Do you still speak
No,
Arabic?
I'm sorry to say I've lost my Arabic.
Well, thank you very much again for speaking to us, Raeef,
Okay.
and shukran gazilan.
Okay, I don't know how to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much in Arabic.